I'm Dr. Yvonne Cason, the president of Spiritual Awakenings International. Welcome, everyone, to our special November Veterans, Military, and First Responders event. I'm really glad you all could make it. We are absolutely delighted at how Spiritual Awakenings International has grown. In the 4 years since we launched, we have grown to be in 100. Yes, we hit 100 countries around the world. So please take a moment now and tell us where in the chat, just put in the chat where it is you're joining us from today. I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada, and our speaker today is joining you from the great state of California. And let's see where other people are from. We've got Mark from Seattle, and we've got Robert from Oregon, and Nancy from Utah. Oh, great. August from Rhode Island. We've got someone from Baltimore, Maryland. Mike, welcome everybody from wherever you are from around the world. Ottawa, Canada. That's great, Jen. So today, as I mentioned, is our special Veterans, Military, and First Responders event, which Spiritual Awakenings International always holds in November in recognition and in gratitude to our service persons. And we do this in November because, as you know, Veterans Day and Remembrance Day is held in November in many countries around the world. And we're just delighted to have a Vietnam War veteran, Reverend Bill McDonald, as our guest speaker today. You're going to love him. I'm now going to ask Robert Baer, who is the Vice President of Spiritual Awakenings International and also a retired first responder himself, to please introduce Reverend McDonald. Robert, please.
Thank you, Dr. Cason. And it's we've been trying to get Reverend McDonald here for quite some time to speak for SAI, and today's the day he's going to do it. And just a little background. Reverend Bill McDonald is an author, a minister. He's had 3 near-death experiences. He's an international motivational speaker, energy healing teacher, award-winning poet, yoga meditation teacher, a Vietnam combat veteran, and he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart, 14 Air Medals, Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry, and other items of recognition. And Reverend McDonald, we're going to hand it over to you, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you, Robert, and thank you, Dr. Cason, for inviting me. It's my honor and pleasure. I don't know what took us so long. Maybe I was sleeping someplace. But I'm awake now. Anyway, so I decided, since this is honoring first responders, I look at this whole thing as a spiritual warrior process, that police, first responders, be they doctors, nurses, firemen, all the different levels. So I'm going to try to tell a story that kind of honors at least 2 of these groups. But other people that aren't necessarily in that group, I consider, if you're a seeker, in my mind, you're a spiritual warrior. You're trying to better yourself. You're trying to better the world. And so some of the things that veterans have gone through or police officers have gone through, we face it differently in different occupations, be it whatever it may be. So I don't want you to feel left out. So I'm going to start off this experiential time with you to discuss, since near-death experiences kind of tie almost everybody in this group together. We're going to start off with my first near-death experience, because the visions and the things that happened in that experience at 8 years old led to knowledge about things that were going to happen in the future, like in Vietnam. And so then I will tie in a Vietnam story. And then, since we're honoring first responders, I thought, what better time than to talk about my son, who's a retired California Highway Patrol police officer, and he had a spiritual experience happen to him during Christmas time, actually Christmas Day, many years ago. So that's kind of what we're looking forward to. Then I'll be taking questions. And if you got some wild, crazy question or something that maybe sounds stupid to you, there is no such thing. Ask. If you have that question, ask. That'll be your opportunity. So I'm going to kind of bring these things to a head, tell the stories, give you an opportunity to ask. And then any time left in, I will obviously fill in with anecdotal things and other stories. But that's where we're going to go. But we're going to start off with in the early 1950s. I was 8.5 years old, got seriously ill, had Bright's disease of the kidney. Dr. Cason probably knows what I'm talking about. It's no longer called Bright's disease. I think there's a new term for that, but that was the old term for the kidney disease. And I had double pneumonia, so both lungs were filled up. Pleurisy, they were all filled up. I couldn't breathe. Started off, believe it or not, with a case of the mumps. And a case of the mumps untreated, let go, led to pneumonia, led to the kidneys going, led to all these other issues. It's interesting how one part of your body left unattended and unfixed kind of contaminates everything. That's what happened. So I was finally sent home from school because they observed how sick I was. And I was finally taken to the doctors, and they immediately rushed me to the county hospital in San Jose, California, where I was immediately put on a stretcher. They told my stepfather and my mother, it may be too late, but we're going to take this kid by. And they strapped me in a gurney and they took me away. And my parents went home, which is, I don't think that would happen today. It's like you drop a kid off the hospital, then you go home. And I didn't see him for a week, you know. So my first night in the hospital, they did a procedure to get some fluids out of my lungs. And I was really weak. But I remember overhearing the conversation these doctors and nurses were having that, well, this kid's never going to go home. He's either going to die here or never going to get out of here. So not very much encouragement on my first few hours in the hospital there. They turned the lights off after this procedure, had me in a room by myself. I was in isolation. There was nobody else around. The room was dark, and I was in great pain. If you have kidney disease, you have a back pain, you have other kind of pains. And then I had the chest pains from the double pneumonia. But I was in pain. I was not very comfortable. And my heart was really pounding heavy and strange. And then all of a sudden, nothing. I felt no pain. It was an absence of pain, an absence of feeling anything physical. I was still consciously me, like there was no transition from this state to that state. It was just, I'm still me, but I'm sensing and realizing that I'm not in that body anymore. And even at 8.5 years old, I thought of it as that body. That's not me. That's the body of this 8-year-old boy. And I feel sorry for him because that body looks pretty bad, but I'm good. You know, I'm all right. I realized that I was this ongoing consciousness, this life that was continuing beyond that state of physical encapsulation in the body. And so I'm observing, and that's the only word I can use because you don't look, see, move around, but I'm observing and sensing this body below me. And I'm light, like light of weight, no weight, but I'm also light, like LIGHT, like sunlight, like brilliance, like an orb of radiance. And I begin to feel loved. I feel the warmth and the embrace of the light itself. And the light is not just outside of me, it's also from within me. So there was this embrace, but it was internal and external at the same time. And I tried to explain this when I was young to somebody, and I said, because, I'm Irish, but I had an Italian grandmother, right? And if you have an Italian grandmother and, and they pinch your cheeks, they love you, they hug you, and it was like having 1 million Italian grandmas hugging you. You know, it was that grandmotherly hug. There was no other way to explain it. It was just, it felt good. And there I was just moments before, in pain, alone for the first time in my life, away from home, in a totally dark room. And now I'm in this envelope of light. It was like being in a cloud. But I say that because later on, when I was in Vietnam, actually flying in clouds, and we didn't have doors on the helicopter, we took them off. So when you flew in a cloud was there, inside, outside. I mean, you could touch the cloud. I don't know if anybody's had that sensation, but when you're flying through a cloud, I mean, you can actually reach out and touch this thing. So, and then the light gets so bright that had I had eyes for eyesight, it would have blinded me. It was that heavy, heavy light. But it was comfortable and it was loving. And then I noticed a panorama, a kaleidoscope of events and things and places and faces and people and situation that was kind of rolling out in front of me, kind of like watching a movie. Kind of just don't know how long this lasted, because there is, and everybody in this group pretty much has had a near-death experience. So when I say there is no time, I don't have to sit here and no, there is no sense of time. There isn't time. So what happens for me to tell you about this would take literally hours to say everything that happened. In reality, I have no idea if it was seconds, minutes, unknown, have no idea. But I saw my wife as a child, and I met her in high school in 1960. So I saw her when she looked like that, and I knew I'm going to marry that. I'm going to marry that lady. I'm going to marry that girl. And I saw the Kennedy assassination. I had no idea who Kennedy was, but I saw this presidential car, and I saw the going down the road, and I knew it was Texas. And I saw him get shot and killed. And when I told that story, which is interesting, I told that story on a YouTube video about what I saw in this vision of that assassination. And I said, there was more than one shooter. And Facebook labeled it conspiracy theory. Here's the truth of, the Warren Commission report. And I'm going, what? I'm telling what my visions were. And how can a vision be wrong? This is what the vision said, right? Anyway, so maybe I was wrong, but in my vision, there was another shooter. So, but what do I know? I was only having a vision. I was a young man. So what's interesting was in high school, 1963, a couple of weeks before the assassination, I told my high school principal, I told some of the teachers, I told some friends, President Kennedy's going to get shot and killed in Dallas, Texas. And everybody, yeah, sure, Bill, yeah. I think if you would have said that now, in the age of the internet, I probably would have had the Secret Service at my door, and when it happened, I'd probably be downtown for questioning. But back then, it was like, what's this crazy kid know about that? Then when it actually happened, there you go. It kind of shook people up. But I saw a lot of events transfolding. International things, national things, but mostly personal things. And I saw myself flying, sitting in a seat with a machine gun in front of me. I realized I'm 8.5 years old, so I didn't quite put all the things together, because it was a Huey helicopter. I know that later on. But in the early 1950s, there was no Huey helicopter, wasn't in existence, but I'm seeing the way it looked then. To me, it looked like a tadpole. It had that kind of funny shaped body with the tail, right? So it was like the tadpole helicopter. People really thought, you're nuts, right? What the hell he's talking about? Future. So when I saw something that day that later on served me well and actually changed the outcome of history, and I'll talk about that, on what happened in 1967. So all this happened when I'm 8.5 years old, and it just went on and on and on. And in this vision, I kept seeing two numbers. I saw 29, and then the 29 would kind of flip around the two. When you turn the two upside down, it looks like a 5. So it looked like 29, 59, 29. I had no clue what that meant at the time. I'll talk about that at the end, but it has some meaning later on, but I didn't have an idea. At the time, I kind of thought, well, maybe 29, I'm facing death. And if that doesn't get me, maybe 59 is my death or close to it, right? That was my thought. And I thought, that's probably a bad word we're gonna, you don't really think on the other side. You observe, you acknowledge. And I'm looking at that and realizing that, well, I'm not in that body, but I'm seeing all these things in the future. And as it turns out, it was 50 years in the future. So I absolutely knew that I was going to have to go back to that cruddy, lousy, terrible body laying down there. And I had to endure much more pain and suffering. So that was an indication that, yeah, this journey was, I'm going to end up back where I started again. But this thing just went on and kept unfolding. And at the time, my family belonged to Self-Realization Fellowship, which is a organization worldwide that Paramahansa Yogananda founded. And he wrote a book in 1946 called Autobiography of a Yogi. And in that book, he has this wonderful chapter. And I had it read to me, but like when I was about 5, 6, 7 years old, I thought, oh, this is a really great story about Babaji and about going to Babaji's cave. And since the age of about 4 or 5, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Babaji's cave. I wanted to experience this sacred, holy ground, this place where Kriya Yoga was reintroduced to the world. And so that was kind of on my mind. And so in this vision forward, I see myself as an older man with a white beard and looking older, entering a cave in the Himalayan mountains, knowing that I do reach Babaji's cave. And as it turns out, 50 years to the day of that near-death experience, I was actually in Babaji's cave. And that was the last part of the vision. I didn't see anything past going into Babaji's cave. Coming out of Babaji's cave, walking down the mountain, had a heart attack, fell off a 30-foot cliff, died on a rock, had another near-death experience, and was revived by a large cobra crawling across my feet. And that's another whole story we'll save for another day. So that was kind of this vision. Well, think about it. As you're older, if you have a near-death experience, what's the common trait? Past life review. How your actions interacted with other people, made people feel, things you've done and where it led, where you're going. But at 8.5 years old, you pulled the puppy dog's tail, you teased your sister. I mean, what's the review? So it's unusual, and I don't know how many other people have had that, but to have something roll forward 5 decades. And that vision ends when you have your next near-death experience, which is just kind of interesting how that went. So when I returned to the body, it was just kind of a sad moment. And for those of us that have done that, and Yvonne knows for sure, and Robert, when you return to the body, it's not necessarily a joyous reunion. It's like, whoopee, I'm back. It's like, dang, got to go through this, huh? So there I am. I'm laying in the bed. And the room is dark again. And the pain is instantaneously back. So I'm physically very well aware that I'm back in the body. But I also know that since I saw all these things in the future, that I accepted as fact, not just a dream. I accepted that as, okay, those things are going to happen. It was presented at that level of knowing that I knew that in spite of the doctors and nurses saying I'm probably never going to get out of there, I knew I was. And so I spent the next 1 year of my life pretty much in that hospital, total bed rest, not allowed to get out of bed to do anything. Most of the time, totally isolated by myself. Once in a while, I'd have somebody else in another room. No television, no smartphone, not even a dumb phone, no landline, no radio, no record player, no newspapers, no coloring books, no books at all to read, no school, no nothing. And people go, oh my God, how terrible. And I go, no, it's the best thing that ever happened. I'd get woke up every day at 6 o'clock when they changed the shifts. And when I spent the rest of the day doing absolutely nothing, I had this opportunity till 9 o'clock when they turned the lights off to experience exploring my own self, finding my own resources. You're 8.5 years old with nothing to do but to think, to imagine, to daydream, to dream, to meditate. I didn't know formal meditations other than some little stupid tricks I made. And I started making up what I thought were my own meditations. I made up things like I imagined myself breathing in, the air was, I visualized it coming into my navel and up my spine and over the top of my head and down. And I was visualizing all these things, which is interesting is on my first trip back to India, 50 years later, at a refugee camp, I met this Tibetan monk who didn't speak English. I didn't speak Tibetan. We spent 3 days together. And I learned more from that man than I have at any other mentor, teacher, or guru ever. And we never exchanged one verbal word, just hands and gestures and face. And first thing he shows me is this imaginary flow of energy coming into the navel. And he's gesturing how this thing works. I go, wait a minute, I made that up. How do you know what I did, right? And so I discovered that the 2 or 3 tricks that I developed laying in that hospital bed for a year were actually Tibetan meditation techniques, old yoga from the Nath tradition and from the Tibetan tradition. I did not know that. So anyway, so while I'm laying in bed, I remember them saying I wasn't ever going to get cured. I wasn't going to get out of there. And I'm realizing that, well, the doctors ain't going to do anything. So it's up to me. All healing really starts with us. I determined I was going to get better. I determined I was going to heal. I visualized myself, I'm walking out of here. And only thing I can remember from my mother's self-realization fellowship lessons that she got weekly, I assume they still do that now. They send out these lessons weekly. They used to be weekly in the mail. And one of the first things they teach you is something called these recharging exercises. I think there's 37 of them or some number like that. And it's about visualizing energy coming in the top of your head. I didn't call it the crown back there, the chakra. To me, it was coming in the top of the head, going through the spine, But I visualize this energy coming when I'm laying in this bed. I'm visualizing this energy coming in. I'm thinking, well, if I do these recharging exercises, even though I can't stand up, move around, I'll just imagine I'm doing them and just tensing my body and relaxing and bringing in the energy. This energy should help. It helps you meditate. Why shouldn't this energy, this dynamo of healing power, this frequency, why shouldn't it also heal me? That was my thought process. And so I would be recharging my body all day long. I had all day long to do absolutely nothing. And for all practical purposes, I was an apprentice monk. I was this 8-year-old monk. There was no talk. There was hours of silence. There was everything that I would dreamt of as an adult, to go someplace in a cave and just be quiet, right? I was there in the hospital room, everybody was leaving me alone, and it was just quiet, solitude. 2 things happen to you when they put you in solitary in jail, right? A guy either goes crazy or a guy gets awakened. Most guys in jail get crazy because they're not that state of frequency and energy. So to me, it was like a year of awakening. And I used that time and focused and everything. And eventually I got out of there. And the first week out of there, for those that love dogs, this is a good story, because it's interesting how I first used this energy. First home a few days, and all of a sudden, I hear my dog, he's outside barking. He got out of the house. And all of a sudden I hear this, boom. A car hit him, 40 miles an hour. So I run out of the house and there's this poodle, little miniature poodle, and it's flattened. On one side, it's just flat. His tongue's hanging out, blood coming out of the corners of its mouth, nose, both nostrils, teardrops coming, blood coming out of the ears. And there's just this dying wimp, you know, this little sound. And this old guy driving, I say old guy, the guy probably looking back was probably 30 years old. And I thought it was funny. This old guy's crying because he hit my dog. I go, what is this? He's an adult and he's crying for this dog. So I pick up the dog and the guy's going, I'm sorry, kid. I'm sorry. I killed your dog. I picked it up and I brought it in the house. And I loved my dog. I mean, I loved my dog. And I realized, for whatever reason, why I realized, I didn't know, but I knew that love is the highest energy. It's the highest frequency. It's how you heal with love. And then I remember the recharging exercises. I thought, why don't I use the recharging exercises impacted with and focused with love? And so I took the dog, and that thought process wasn't really that long. Me explaining it is long, but in the truth, it was just a knowing, here's what I'm going to do. So I'm looking at it, trying to explain. But I put the dog in my lap, and when I focused on this imaginary, quote unquote, imaginary energy coming to the top of my head, this light is coming out my hands. I feel it, I sense it, right? And when I put my hands on the dog, it was like sparks of static electricity coming out my fingertips. And it hits the dog very painfully. It goes, and the dog jumps up and runs around the house, and never took him to a vet. Lived for years. And then I realized that it was my intense love combined with the power of this yoga energization technique, using yoga, energy, and love together, that created this great healing, which I've used ever since. I do workshops on this and combine Hawaiian healing techniques, and that's what I'm doing now. But anyway, so that was like the first use of this right after that experience. And that same week, my mother and I are sitting around the house. I'm not in school. I'm out, but I'm back from the hospital, but I'm not in school. And we hear what sounds like somebody playing loud choir music. There was this angelic sounding choir, kind of like if you had a bunch of nuns that were singing Gregorian chants, but not with the men's voices, but like with feminine voices. It was like Gregorian chants. And it was something about the vibration of this. It just was beautiful. My mother asked, you got a record on? No. Is the radio on? No. Is the TV on? No. There was nothing in the house. So we went outside, we could still hear it. We walked a block away, we could still hear it full loud. Come back in the house, wherever we went, that sound was still going for an hour. There was this beautiful music. And finally, my mother just said, it's the angels. It's the only explanation. It's the angels singing. So that was kind of like the beginning of this thing. Going forward, after high school, after Uncle Sam taking me into the Army, a long story, going to Vietnam. I end up in Vietnam, and I know that I have a purpose. I'm supposed to be there. There's something I need to do. And I remember myself sitting behind this machine gun and making a life or death decision that was really important. I knew it was going to be important. It was important that I be on that mission. It was important that I be sitting in that seat. And it would change a potential parallel history, which sounds strange, but that was the thought I had. And it turns out we had a new officer, a pilot, come in, a major, graduate of West Point, spent his tours of duty in Europe, Germany and all that stuff, spit and polish, by the book, salute, all that stuff. Well, you come into a combat aviation unit, nobody salutes on the field. There's too many officers. You don't salute. You don't even. It's just, hey Joe, how's it going? Because it's like on a crew, you got 2 officers and 2 enlisted men. Formality's gone. This guy, no, he coming in, he's a major, and he wants salutes and he wants everything, and he's telling me what he wants, doesn't know what he's doing. So we're flying along the Cambodian border. And this is going to sound strange to people who weren't in Vietnam, but they actually had places that were called free fire zones, meaning if you saw something that moved, you could shoot at it. And then you were in other areas that weren't free fire zones. You could have the enemy shooting at you, but to return the fire, you'd have to call Saigon and get permission, tell them where you're at, and get permission to fire back. Well, if you're in a helicopter going 100 miles an hour, calling in, it's too late. They've already shot you down or whatever. So we were over a free fire zone, meaning if we actually saw an enemy movement, we didn't have to call in and check because there's only supposed to be bad guys down there. So we're flying over this trail, and on this trail, and it's not too far from the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but there's a little hamlet down the road. And the major sees these, what appears to be, and it appeared to be troops marching down this dirt road. Looked like they were all carrying weapons on their shoulders. And there was about 30 something of them, and there was a guy in the front. They're all dressed in black. So it looked like, for all practical purposes, Viet Cong, with the leader in the front. And I was given a direct order. And for those in the military, when you get a direct order, disobeying it, you're going to go to jail. You don't disobey a direct order. And in combat, that's even worse. So the major says, Mac, being McDonald, hey, Mac, want you to shoot those guys down with the machine gun. Well, I got an M60 machine gun, fires 6.62 millimeter rounds, big guys, 750 rounds a minute. I could have just cut everybody down on that road. I was only up about 100 feet, but no problem at all. But I knew from my near-death experience, vision, that this was where I was supposed to make a stand. That this is where there was parallel histories. If I followed orders, history would have went one direction. If I followed the divine voice, history would be changed for the better. And I knew it's not what it looks like it is. Don't pull the trigger. And I told the major, I said, no, I'm not firing. He goes, no, I'm giving you direct order. This is combat situation, this is direct order. And I said, no. So he threatened me with a court martial, going to jail, going to Leavenworth, all that stuff. I said, do whatever you got to do. It's not what you think it is. So he turns the helicopter around. So the gunner on the other side, he orders him to fire. And there's a man that's brave, because I did it with a knowing. My gunner on the other side, who flew with me for about 6 months, tells the major, I flew with McDonald for 6 months, and I've seen some really strange things. If he says not to do something, I'd follow it. He says, I'm not firing. Now, talk about bravery. This guy, because by this time, there's 2 of us now disobeying a direct order, which makes it, according to the military, 2 or more people disobeying a direct order is considered mutiny. That is punishable by death or life in prison. I was 21 years old. I'd still be in jail today. Okay. So the major's going crazy. I finally said, look, fly down right next to them. If they shoot or if they look like they got weapons, I'll shoot. Fly. So finally he was convinced. He flies down, and it turns out walking down that road from this little hamlet was a group of 30-something children being led by a Catholic priest going to the vegetable garden for the community. And what they had on their shoulders were rakes and shovels and hoes. Think about how history would have been changed if an American helicopter had shot down 30-some innocent children. Think about the international repercussions. All the lives that would have been changed, all the families, including all of us on the ship. Now, I ask people when I give a live talk, I go, how many would have did that? People, they think no, in reality, not many would actually raise their hand, because what you're saying is, all they got to do is say, I'm following orders. We've heard that defense before. right? I'm just following orders. It's interesting that we held the Germans after World War II to that, but in American military, that's not an excuse. It's not the same thing. No, follow. No, it's no to me. And I teach people when I go out and I talk to veterans. I said, there's military orders and then there's divine order. Always follow the heart, whatever the consequences may be, because there'll be some consequences. I could have been in jail today. I could have been in front of a firing squad. Because disobeying a direct order is a pretty heavy thing. So, all right, fast forward, because I promised Robert I was going to tell a first responder story for the police. My son, who was a California Highway Patrol officer for 30-something years. He's retired now, 2-3 years. But when he started off, he was in Los Angeles, like everybody starts off, I guess, and then he went to the Bay Area. And he was patrolling the Golden Gate Bridge. Talk about nice duty. He's patrolling the Golden Gate Bridge and up the North Bay there into Marin County and all that. And it was nice, And he's working, and he's not going to make it home for Christmas. And he said, well, what can I do for you, Dad, for Christmas? What gift can I give you? And I said, I'll tell you what. I want to hear a story from you Christmas Day. I want you to gift me with a story from the heart. I said, what do you mean? I said, you'll know. Just gift me a story from your heart. So he thought I was kind of nuts. So he's working Christmas Day. It's raining. You just come across the Golden Gate Bridge. Just gone through the tunnel. If you've been in the tunnel, a tunnel's named after who's that comedy guy that died, that committed suicide? Williams. Anyway, they got it named after him. It's the Rainbow Tunnel. And on the other side of that, there was this guy that turned out to be about his age, about 22 years old, something like that, was walking alongside the Highway 101. Well, you're not allowed in California to walk on the highway. It's against the law. It's Christmas morning. So my son doesn't want to be hardcore. I mean, geez. So he pulls over the side of the road. This guy's drenched wet. He smells. He's dirty. Tells the guy to get in the back seat, get out of the rain. He says, what's your name? And looks up the guy. He looks up the information on the guy, and he finds out that this guy just got out of San Quentin prison 3 months before. He's on parole. But his address before he went to jail was Mill Valley, which those in California, Mill Valley is a very rich little town, little community. And he looks at the address and he goes in his little thing there and he goes, that's just like a couple of miles away. What's the odds, right? So he says, well, what's this address? He said, oh, it's my parents. But he says, I haven't seen my parents since before I went to jail. They didn't even know I got arrested. So this kid, he didn't want to go, right? He goes, I'm taking you to your parents, right? So he drives over there. Now, this is against the rules. Robert, you're a police officer. You're not a taxi service to drop people off to family members that may not even want this guy around their house, right? You don't know if he's been a threat to them or anything else, but he wants his feelings. So he gets there and he has the guy stay in the back of the car. He knocks on the front door of this house. Beautiful house. He said, very expensive, millions of dollars, even before inflation, millions of dollars in the old days in California, right? And this guy comes to the door, this older guy. Son said, about your age, Dad. I said, okay, yeah, about my age. And asked him, this police officer in a police uniform there, what's up? What happened? He says, well, I believe I have somebody that you may want to see. And the guy's looking in the back seat, trying to see this grubby guy in the back. And he tells him the story. He picked up this guy and he believes he's their son. And the guy starts getting teary-eyed. And he calls his wife over. And him and his wife are huddled there. And then the wife says, we've been praying for the last 3 years to find out what happened to our son. He just disappeared. We didn't know if he was alive or dead. And what we said last night in our prayers on Christmas Eve, all we wanted for Christmas was a message from our son. And then, of course, my son's telling me the story, and he's getting touched as I am just telling it. And then my son goes and lets him out, and the guy reluctantly gets out of the back seat, and he tells him, "No, get over here, go see your parents. It's an order." And then he gets there, and the kid kind of walks with his hands down, his arms at his side, and they both hug him. And they take him inside the house. And so my son calls me. "Hey, Dad, I got that story for you." And I thanked him. So not only did it make their Christmas Day, but my son's Christmas Day, but my Christmas Day. And I share that story because it touches a lot of hearts. People don't realize what police officers go through, and sometimes they make decisions like that. That decision could have backfired on him. Those people could have called his sergeant and complained that he brought this guy to their house that they didn't want there. They thought he was a threat or something. He disobeyed all orders, followed the higher order, that inner voice. And that's what it's about. So before I let you ask your questions here, I will tie in, I talked about earlier about 2959. Remember that I said I'd tie that in later. So when I was remembering back 2959, at the time, to me, I thought, well, if I'm going to die at 29 or 59, that means I have health problems. So obviously I need to take care of my health. So when I got out of the hospital, I became a vegetarian, the only one in my family. And being a vegetarian in the early 1950s was not an easy thing to do. There was no restaurants, there was nothing in the stores, there was nobody's making anything special for you, not even in my family. So it was a lot of pasta, a lot of carbs, a lot of stuff like that, which was not necessarily good for you. But anyway, and when I went to India that 50 years later, and I had that heart attack and fell off the cliff, you would think after being revived and having a near-death experience that the first thing that anybody would do, except for a guy, of course, is to go, let's go get checked out of the hospital. Maybe I had a heart attack, I died. Maybe I should go to check. No, I didn't go to the hospital till months later when I was back in America. And I come back to America, and what was interesting was the first thing that happens is all of a sudden I got this big bump in my forehead. And I go to the doctor and I have a big cancerous tumor. I went to India seeking the gifts of India. And it's like all the cancer in me, this, whatever it is, this part of me just appears right on my spiritual eye. It's cut out, taken out, and I got stitches, and it's exercise for my body. It was really kind of interesting. I thought it was kind of interesting. Anyway, a month later, after about 6 falling downs with heart attacks, I thought, maybe I should check on my problem. Maybe I really have a real bad heart here. So I drive myself to the ER. I go in, I stand in line. You ever go to an ER and you stand in line and you finally get to see the person? And what's the first thing they ask you after standing 20 minutes in the line? You would think it would be, what's wrong with you? How can we help you? No, the first thing they asked me is, do you have health insurance with us? That was the first question. Anyway, so they didn't ask me. They said, fill this thing out, go sit over there and then get in that line. So I got in another line, another 15 minutes later, I finally get this nurse. And on the third page of this Kaiser form, it says, why are you here today? Third page. And I said, I'm having a full-blown heart attack. So she finally gets there and she goes, she kind of gives me, I'll be the judge of that. You're saying you have a full-blown heart attack? I say, I'm having a full-blown heart attack. She goes, how'd you get here? So I drove. She says, where'd you park? I said, about a mile over there because the lot was full. I had to walk. Yeah, okay, fine. And then she listens to my heart and she goes, my God, you're having a heart attack. She rings these bells. I felt like I was in Kmart. You remember Kmart with the blue light special? There's some kind of light going on. Next thing you know, they're bringing out a gurney, they're throwing me on a gurney. She says, sir, you're having a heart attack. And I go, just like I am right now at this calm. I go, yes, ma'am, I know I'm having a heart attack right now. She goes, no, you really have a heart attack. I go, yes, I know. That's why I came in. She says, why did you say so? Anyway, so I get rolled in the doctor, and while I'm there waiting for the doctor, and he wants to operate and do all kinds of things, I do something that I don't normally do. I complain. I go, man, I said, I'm vegetarian. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't add sugar to nothing. I don't add salt to nothing. I exercise. I do yoga. I meditate. Et cetera, all these good things I do, right? And yet I got a heart attack. And the doctor picks up my charts and he looks through it and he goes, Mr. McDonald, just looking at your charts and your numbers, he says, I would have thought you'd been dead at 29. I said it coming just today, and he looks at it, he says, oh, you're going to be 59 in a couple of weeks. He says, you should have been dead at 29, and now you're going to be 59. I'm 29, 59, right? So I thought, oh, had I not changed my diet, 29 would have been an exit point, apparently. And there I was, and then I go, well, I got 2 weeks to go, maybe 59, maybe I'm checking out, right? So I got a call from my class high school reunion committee, and they go, hey, we got a reunion coming up. Who do you want to see? And I said, well, I want to see my buddy, Paul O'Brien, another Irishman, born in San Francisco, same day as me, same hospital. We were in bassinets together. Our mothers were roommates together in a hospital. But we didn't know that till 10, 12 years later. We met in Sunnyvale down the road in school. We found out all that information. We realized, oh, we've known each other since birth, right? So I thought, well, if there's anything to astrology, I wonder what happened to him. So I asked the committee, I want to see Paul O'Brien at the reunion. They go, I'm sorry. He died just before his 59th birthday. So I thought, wow, because he didn't change his diet. He smoked, he drank. Anyway, there you go. So anyway, I could go on and on and on, but that just kind of gives you an idea. And if you got questions at this time, before I get too carried on, I'll entertain any questions you have.
Thank you. It was a great presentation. And for those of you that have any questions, please put them in the chat. And I'm going to start, as people are writing questions, I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts about past lives?
This is funny because I got asked this. I was on a radio show in Budapest or someplace. I was in my front room here, but it was like podcast. And the guy goes, obviously, he says, I watched your videos, I read your book, all this other stuff. He says, obviously you believe in past lives. And then, betraying even my own thoughts, my answer was no. And the guy goes, what do you mean no? I said, I don't even believe in incarnation. He goes, what do you mean? He says, if you believe in the ego and the separation from the one, then, of course, then you believe in lives and birth and death and pain and suffering and heaven and whatever else you got and reincarnation. Then, but if you're not separated from the source and you realize your oneness with the source, there is no reincarnation. There is no incarnation. This is all just a dream. Now, that's one answer. The other answer is, on this level where we all have an ego because we got a personal history, we all have a story, we all have a body of some kind. At that level, yes, I believe in reincarnation. But the ultimate, there is no incarnation at all. There's just one God. But reincarnation is a natural order of evolution. It's how we dissolve our karma. It's how we become enlightened. It's how we evolve. So I've had instances in my life. I've had people coming to me. Numerous stories. I don't know if you have time for them, if you have more questions, but we could go deeper into that subject. But yes and no on that answer, if that makes sense. Yes and no. If you believe in this life and you believe who you are, then yes, there's reincarnation. But if you don't believe any of that's real, it's all a dream, then no, there is no incarnation or reincarnation. And that's your confusion.
I do have a follow-up question to that. Do you remember in any of your past lives, if you have had this, if you've had like STDs in your past lives?
I've had gurus come to me. I have had Vedic readings. I've had Western astrology. I've had channelers. I've had holy men in the Himalayan mountains come to me. I've had Catholic priests, Father Jack LaRocca. I've had all kinds of people come to me with their visions of who I was and what I did. And so relying on what they say, I'd have to answer yes to all the above. But I also believe this, and this is going to be different than your other responses you get from people. I believe this, because when somebody comes on and says, I was this guy, I was that guy, they're everybody in the world, famous, they were, and I kind of deflated them because I said, well, since we're all one, everybody was that person. There was no separation. Well, no, I was really one of the disciples with Jesus. No, we all were. It's all shared one consciousness. So there's nothing that you weren't. It's all. But yes, I have recollections of past lifetimes. I have recollections from other people. I have verifications from Vedic readings and charts and from my naughty palm leaf reading. Catholic priest, Father Jack LaRocca, had visions of me when he was 4 or 5 years old and spent the next 40 years looking for me to tell me who he thought I was. Lots and lots of numerous things like that. So yes, and we do get glimpses once in a while. And I think when you find young children, like my youngest grandson, one day I was sitting in the front room with him, and he was like 3 years old, 4 years old, and he's playing with this little toy helicopter. He looks at me and says, Grandpa, remember when me and you were flying these things around, and he's talking about this formation of helicopters and stuff and in the war? Where in the hell does kids hear all these stories, right? Not from me, right? So when kids are up to about 5, 6 years old, there's a untapped well of memories that if they have the right set of parents and the right set of questions and trust, where they haven't been beaten with, that's your imagination, and but if they're allowed to just dream out loud and speak, children will really surprise you with what they remember. But as you get older, you don't remember because you're not supposed to remember. You're supposed to live this life in the now.
Thank you. Got a couple questions regarding Babaji. The first one from Marina. Can you talk about your experience in the cave with Babaji? And the second one, because they tie in with one another, Yvonne, please tell us about your NDE outside of Babaji's cave. So twofold question.
Okay, first off, I'm allowed to talk about 4 experiences with Babaji. And I say that, there's meaning to that when I say that. Meaning just because you see a great one, or you have a supernatural experience of some kind, you have to have the wisdom to know this is something I can talk about, or this is too sacred to talk about. But sometimes things happen to you, and for many years I didn't say anything because it was like, well, this is me and whatever it was, right? And then I was in SRF at some convocation, and I was talking to one of the brothers there, and I was gabbling with the spirit. And he says, well, for some people, he says, not many, because SRF doesn't like people talk about their experience. He says, but sometimes you will know, you're given a sign, or somebody tells you that these experiences aren't just for you. You're supposed to share these to inspire other people to believe. But in general, SRF teachings are, keep them to yourself and everything. So that's kind of the way I was raised. So it took me a while to get out of this thing, and I had to be told by several monks, several gurus, several readings where I finally go, okay, it's okay to talk about these. And then I got an okay from the experience itself. So I've had 4 encounters that I post on my YouTubes where I actually had a real experience with the divine presence of Babaji. Babaji's cave was something I wanted to do all my life. And I thought my life was going to come to an end after that. One thing I say now to young people, because they all want to go to Babaji's cave, and I say that, then people go, well, that's because you already been there. You can say this. So you hold that in reference. When I close my eyes in Babaji's cave, it's just like right now, if I close my eyes, I'm in the sacred spot, wherever I want to be. Closing my eyes here is the same as closing my eyes in Babaji's cave. But I have to reference that. There's a great energy present in that cave. Now, if you've developed yourself to a level of where that great energy presence is always within you. You become the cave. That's a whole different thing. But for most people, going to a sacred place enhances this energy, steps it up, recharges it, uplifts your batteries. Going to Babaji's cave, if you have the opportunity, do so. It's I went there when everything was closed down, and it was a special thing, and I got lost. There's a whole story on that. When I left there and I was having this heart attack and I fell off the cliff and I died, when I was actually going through this dying experience, looking at my body laying all twisted, 30 feet onto a boulder, right, in a canyon, right? I'm looking down at that thinking, I don't care if I've been to Babaji's cave. What else do I need? This is the end of my vision. This is the end of my thing. I was happy to go, but the cobra brought me back. What happened was I'm looking down at this, and all of a sudden this cobra. When I first told this story, I said it was a large cobra, and I don't know, maybe it was 6-7 feet. And I think the last time I told this story was 15 or 18 feet. My wife always reminds me, says, that cobra keeps growing. I said, well, I'm Irish, but the truth of the matter is, when you got a wild cobra crossing your feet and part of its body in the grass, and then when its head leaves, that part, so both of them, all you see is the body going across your legs. You have no idea how big it is. But trust me, when you have a cobra crawl across your body, you will say it was a large cobra. How large is up to your imagination. This was huge. But it wasn't fear. It was the power of love itself. It was like a paramedic with the paddles, right? With those defibrillators. Clear. Like somebody put paddles on my heart. And it was like this love of that cobra awoke in me. And I just jumped up from being all crumbled up on that rock. I jumped up and grabbed that snake. And I'm grabbing the snake and my hands are like this, meaning the fingers couldn't touch and the thumbs couldn't touch, wrapped around that body of there. It was bigger than that. So it was like you had to fill in the size of that snake. It was big. And it kept slithering through and slithering. And I'm chasing this thing through tall 2-foot grass, with sandals on, with not a care in the world. I just want to pick it up and hold it. And it finally slithers through this little creek. And there is this tiny little waterfall. Just a little trickle of water coming down, and there's a little cave behind it. And it goes in behind this little cave behind the waterfall, curls up with its head and its tongue out, looking at me. And then I realized at that moment, from the book about Babaji's cave, that Larry Masha, when he had that palace materialized, he was told to go down and bathe. And nobody knows where that place is at. And I'm lost and I fall off a cliff and there it is. And I'm thinking, this is where Larry Masha bathed. This is the little trickle of a waterfall. I knew it was. And my heart was just like, wow. And I left there in great wonder. And about a month later, I'm in the desert. And I come across this temple. And this old lady had a basket full of cobras. Now, the ones you see in India, they're cobras. They milk out the venom. They're not, supposedly not dangerous. And the venom's out, supposedly. Anyway, she got a basket of about 7 of these big cobras in this basket. And she's got a bamboo stick and she's hitting it and they're getting angry and they're all coming up. She's trying to get people to come there and see these angry cobras, right? And then charge them money. And I got angry when I saw that. I ran across this stone courtyard and I stood on top of this basket, my feet on either side of this basket below me with the cobras coming up between my legs, in my crotch all over the place, and one crawls up in my shirt, and wraps itself around my body, and the other one slithers up and wraps itself 3 times around my neck, comes out, and it's got its little fangs out there and it's got its mouth open. And all of a sudden I feel this tongue on my eyelash. butterfly kiss with a cobra. And I turn around and the mouth of this thing is open and there's this dark cavern of love. I'm looking down the throat of this thing and it's an eternity inside this thing. And I'm mesmerized. I don't know how long it was. It was just me and this cobra. And it's literally half inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch from my eyeball. Even if it had been no venom, it could have bit my eyeball with the fangs. They were real. And it wasn't an ounce of fear. It was all pure love. And you gotta realize I'm yelling at this woman. I'm moving my arms around. I'm loud voice. I'm doing everything you don't do around wild snakes, right? You know, slow movements, slow talking, calm. No, I'm going, the snakes are wrapping around me and a couple, on my crotch. And I never felt so loved in my entire life other than being hugged at my near-death experience. It was almost the same kind of thing. It was like I was drawn into this Babaji's cave again. It was like the divine cave. It was like the presence of Babaji's cave. Once again, I'm inside of it. It felt just like inside of Babaji's cave, inside of this cobra. It was poetic. It was just like, wow. Of course, my friend was with me. He was standing about 20 feet away, getting crazy. He's like, what are you doing? Anyway, so that's my experience with cobras. I did not know at the time the significance of what cobras were all about. I didn't know there was a connection with that, with the Lord Shiva and the Kundalini energy, symbolic of all that. But everywhere I went in India, there was a cobra. And I never passed up an opportunity to handle, a touch, to love, to pet, to kiss. You ever kiss the head of a cobra? Anyway, it's a crazy obsession. One would think you'd have to be nuts to do something like that. And maybe that answers the question for the people that know them. So anyway, so there you go. Hope that answers your question, but we could go deeper on the subject at another time, but it is involved. But 4 of my experiences with Babaji have been verified by witnesses, including gurus or whatever, who verified my experience, which always makes you feel good. You know that you're not crazy. So I share those experiences that have been witnessed or attested to by powerful other people. But just because you have a spiritual experience doesn't give you a license to go ahead and just share it. You should dig for the wisdom. There's a time and a place to share everything. And there are, even though it sounds like I should, if you read my book, sounds like I share everything. No, I don't. That's the tip of the iceberg. Trust me, for every one I talk about here, there's 15 below it. So there's a time and a place to share. But now we're in that age where sharing is almost necessitated by the power of negativity and disbelief. Mm-hmm. So we need people out there to affirm miracles do happen, to affirm positive things, and to affirm, most importantly, that love exists, even if it's in the body of a cobra.
Got a couple more comments. This is from Marianne. Amazing experiences. Thanks so much for helping me through your sharing your story. My question is, do you teach online? I would love to know more. Thanks so much. From Marianne.
All right, here's what's going on. I've been fighting this thing for a long time. I'm what you call a reluctant teacher. I've been going around the world. I'm not a business. I've never charged for any of my events, worldwide events. I'm talking India, Germany, Switzerland, wherever I go. I pay my own dime. I show up. I give these free lectures and whatever people want to know. But what I don't want is a following. I don't want an organization. I'm not looking to become your guru. Teachers a push. But I am trying to find those souls out there, those seekers out there that want to become spiritual, emotional, and physical healers using energy. And as I go around the world, I'm looking for those people. And I will next year, starting 2025 through 2026, I'm going to be giving retreats and workshops exclusively for people that want to go deeper into sharing what they learn and giving it away. And that's different than just healing people on an individual basis. If you've been following my YouTube channel and if you've been following my Facebook page, you know there are attested to miracles happening at every workshop I've given. Every workshop I've given, there's been attested to actual physical healing miracles. Every single one. It's amazing. It surprises me even. Things happen and it's like, what, really? Okay, great. I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but every time I'm pleasantly surprised, because what I don't teach is this. I don't teach that Reverend Bill's a healer or Reverend Bill's healing you. What I teach is you are the healer. You are the teacher. You are the guru. Look for the power and the healing within yourselves. So unlike other teachers, gurus, people out there, I'm not seeking followers. I'm seeking seekers to teach, to give, to spread. And all I'm teaching is the power of self-love, self-forgiveness, and gratitude. And as simplistic as that sounds, it's much deeper than people realize. And it opens the doors, no matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what dogma, what scriptures you follow, what church you belong to, what ashram you go to. Doesn't matter what temple you're at. It doesn't matter. Love and serve, forgive. All religions can buy that. Or no religion, doesn't matter, don't care. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for people that just want to give. Now, if somebody's already in the healing trade of some kind, like they're acupuncturists or whatever, I don't expect them to work for free. This is something they can add to their repertoire. But for other people out there looking to become a conduit of what I'm teaching, which is giving and teaching of love, then have them contact me and stay tuned. We will be doing workshops. We will be doing. And when I do workshops, basically they will be whatever it costs for the hotel and things. That's it. It's a break-even thing. So it's not a business. And at some point in time, because I'm almost 80 years old, I'll be 79 in March, so I got less than a year and a half, I will be 80. I kind of want to slow down a little bit. I want to do more podcasts, more webinars, more online. I got 3 new books coming out by the end of December. I got another book coming out in April. And I got several more books coming. I want my books to be the teacher. I don't want people to look at me for the answers. I want them to read the books and realize that all I'm writing about is love. And if they want to repeat and steal and plagiarize what I've written, go ahead and steal from me. I don't care. There's no original ideas in the universe. I've taken from the one source. If you can make them better, great. If you can make them yours, I don't care. This is not an ego trip. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a world where I can take my hands and give them to several dozen people, and I have that many more hands out there working. And when I'm gone, the love continues, because that is the teaching. So yes, I'm teaching people how to love and how to forgive. That's all.
We're going to wrap this up with one more comment question. And before I do this, I want to thank you personally for your service to our country and for coming to speak for SAI today.
Thank you, Robert.
You hit it out of the park. And this is from Michael. I was in a coma with kidney failure. I overcame it and have no kidney problems. Ever since that experience, I have messages from loved ones who passed, and it affects my daily life. I felt souls walking through the hospital during that time. I don't know what to do to stop these feelings or who to talk to, because people think I'm off.
Okay.
Do you comment on that?
Yeah, first off, Robert, I saw that question earlier and I was hoping we were going to get to it. Don't change anything. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't even try to cope with it. It's a gift. Don't examine it too closely. Don't analyze it. It's a gift. Find what that gift's supposed to give you. It's teaching you greater compassion. It's teaching you the oneness of the consciousness. That's all. Life is continuous. These are all good things. And let's get real about experiences. I talked about earlier, have the wisdom when to share experiences on an individual basis. That's really important. I have a next door neighbor to me, devout, born again Christian, doesn't understand my oneness or studying yoga and all these other things. How can you be a reverend and still, honor other religions? We've been neighbors for 40 some years. We've never exchanged a word about my experiences. I've written books. He hasn't read any of them. So my thing is this, I would never drop those on him because he wouldn't understand. So when you got people in your life that don't understand where you're coming from and what you have to offer, then follow what the Bible says about, dropping pearls at the feet of swine. I mean, you don't waste the pearls. There's some people that can handle the information you have. You will know and should have developed the wisdom to know this person I can share with, this person I shouldn't share with. You don't want to convert anybody. And it's your ego that wants everybody to understand. It's not important to understand. You don't understand that experience? Great. Let it go. They don't have to. We know in the end, when all this is done and we all awake, it's all one again. We're all home. No one gets there before you do, but it's all God. We're all good. So if everything's not all good right now, it means it ain't done yet. So hold that within you. When there was that old expression that Yogananda used to say, just to kind of end this thing. He goes to his guru, Shiva Teshwar. He says, "Oh, Guru, I had this, I was in samadhi, all these great things happen." He starts getting excited and everything, and pats his head, Yogananda's head, and says, "Go sweep the porch, fetch water, chop wood." Right? I tell people, go take a shower, change clothes, go to work. You still got your life to live. These other things come to you, don't get excited. You should kind of live your life on this even level. You win $1 billion, you lose $1 million. Who cares? It's who you are here every day. Just see the light in everybody. See God in all. Know that God in you is the God in everybody else. Say, follow my 2 rules, which I'll leave you with. 1, you have to love everybody, starting with yourself. But rule number 2 is just as important. You don't have to like anybody. So there you go. If you love them, you don't have to like them. I hope that hits home with a few people.
Reverend Bill McDonald, thank you for your time today. I'm going to turn this back over to Dr. Cason. Yvonne?
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Reverend Bill McDonald, for an absolutely inspiring presentation. I know we're all grateful. There have been many positive comments in the chat. I want to ask you one thing before I let you go, which is people are asking for clarification how they can contact you on Facebook. What are they looking for? Just your name, Reverend Bill McDonald?
Yeah, on Facebook, it's just Bill McDonald. Mm-hmm. I got 2 pages. I got one for author, mm-hmm. and I got a personal one, Rev Bill McDonald, and then I got my website, www.revbillmcdonald.com. That's interesting. So not too hard. And I got a whole bunch of books on Amazon. 3 new books coming out. 1 in April. That'll be the 4th new book. And I got 200 videos of mine on my YouTube channel, which happens to be called Rev Bill McDonald. Amazing, again, original. And I probably got 1,000 or 1,200, something like that, podcast videos out there you'll find elsewhere. Some with a few people. It's interesting. you do the same thing on one channel and it gets 28 views, and another channel that gets 500,000. I haven't figured this out yet, but it's like, it's the same information. It's like, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Reverend Bill. That was an absolutely fabulous presentation.